Before we get started, just a quick note, spoiler alert.
And we are adults, and I will try very hard not to use adult language, but this is the warning.
Hey y'all, welcome back to Last Library on the Left. My name is Jennifer.
And I'm Sadina. We are a horror review and discussion podcast where we talk about horror in books, movies, and other formats, why we seek it out, and why we need it in our lives.
And today we have a twofer for you. We're going to be talking about the 2008 film Midnight Meat Train and the 2011 film Cabin in the Woods.
I will be talking about Midnight Meat Train. So like Jennifer said, it was made in 2008. The writers are Clive Barker and Jeff Bueller. Sorry, I had to. It may be Buller, I don't know, but Bueller sounds better, whatever. And director Ryuhei Kitamura. The following is the majority of the people who were in the movie. Chainsaw, really? Really? Probably chasing around little pieces in the bowl.
No. He's like, this is what you get now.
Right. Woke me up from my nap. Okay. Bradley Cooper as Leon, Leslie Bibb as Maya, Vinnie Jones as Mahogany, or as the Butcher, because I didn't remember his name was Mahogany until I did the cast list. I was like, oh, right. I think I just called him Butcher in my head.
I thought of him as the Butcher too.
Right? Brooke Shields as Susan Hoff, Robert Bart as Jurgis, Barbara Eve Harris as Detective Lynn Hadley, Peter Jacobson as Otto, and Tony Curran as Driver. That's all that's listed. Okay, that made me nervous when I looked it up. In fact, I didn't even have him on the list. He's the last one on the list.
Whoa.
Because when I saw it in the cast, I was like, Driver? Who the fuck is Driver? Like a cab driver? Like, when was that in the movie? I mean, and then it was Driver. And I was like, oh, that's even worse that his name is just Driver.
Yeah,
cool.
So here's the cast list for Cabin in the Woods. It was written by Joss Whedon and Drew Goddard, directed by Drew Goddard, and produced by Joss Whedon, starring Kristen Connolly as Dana, Chris Hemsworth as Kurt, Jesse Williams as Holden, Anna Hutchinson as Jules, Fran Kranz as Marty, Sigourney Weaver as the director, Brian J. White, and he played Daniel Truman, Richard Jenkins as Sitterson, and Bradley Whitford as Hadley.
Also, I kind of want to get out of the way while we're doing the credits. When I talk about Midnight Meat Train, I'm going to be talking about a song from Lonely Island. It's the song I Run New York. But here is the list of the Lonely Island band participants, writers, singers, I don't know. Lonely Island. The members of Lonely Island are Andy Samberg, Jorma Taccone, and Akiva Schaffer. Y'all will find out later why that's important. It came to me while I was rewatching. We're going to tell a funny story about Midnight Meat Train first. So, the first time I ever found out about Midnight Meat Train was when I was years and years ago, I guess 2008. I was working at a Best Buy in Indiana, and I worked in the warehouse. And in the morning, I printed our manifest and was going to see what was going to be on the truck either that afternoon or that night. And the manifest came through, and there was a ton of lines that just said Midnight Meat Train. And we were like, what is, and I kind of called some of the other guys over from the warehouse and was like, hey, what do you think this is in there? I don't know. And we were like, did corporate start buying porn? Because you can see that it's a media. Yeah. We were like, that doesn't seem like Best Buy would buy porn. So for the whole day, we were just really waiting for this box to come on this truck. And it wasn't until the box came and we open it, we're looking, but all you see are the spines. Yeah. And so you just see Midnight Meat Train and we're like, that doesn't give you any information. Right. And it's just white letters on black. And you're like, it could be a porno. Who knows? Oh, you turn and you look at the cover. Oh, that's not a porno. Okay.
It could have gone either way. And I like the way you guys went.
Yeah. Oh, horror wasn't anywhere near what we absolutely thought it was porno. Oh, there may have even been a split second where I was still convinced it was porno, but maybe a snuff porno. Oh. Still not in Best Buy's wheelhouse. But I bought a copy and then went home and watched it immediately, even with that thing in the back of my head thinking it was a snuff porno. I don't know, y'all. I can't explain it. Look, I was working a lot of hours back then.
Oh my god, that's hilarious.
Who knows what 21-year-old Sadina was thinking? Who knows?
I love how that was your introduction to
that was porno snuff was my assumption, and then bought it anyway.
Oh my god.
Wow, okay. I may edit out some of that because that doesn't really paint me in the best light. It's fine. Whatever.
It's so funny. Wow. I kind of wish I would have watched Midnight Meat Train before I knew who Bradley Cooper was.
Oh,
because it was kind of hard to take him seriously. Because I've seen him in things like Wedding Crashers and The Hangover, and so I was like, okay.
I mean, granted, I saw it when it first came out, so he wasn't super big yet.
Yeah.
But I really have only seen him in a lot of more serious roles. Silver Linings Playbook, and I mean, I guess the A-Team wasn't really serious because it was pretty bad, but he was the face of the A-Team.
Right?
But like more actiony, I guess, is what I should have said. Not
yeah.
serious, more actiony type things.
Yeah, not comedies.
Right. In fact, I forgot he was in The Hangover until you just said it.
Yeah.
I always think of Galifianakis first.
I mean, granted, I understand why you think of Galifianakis, but yeah, he was in there.
Whoa. I mean, you kind of just blew my mind, even though I already had that
right?
info.
He was this really rude guy in Wedding Crashers, and you didn't want him to win. And then he was rude in The Hangover. And yeah, it was a comedy, but he was kind of like a mean guy. So it was just kind of weird to see him in Midnight Meat Train, and I'm like, I can't take you seriously.
Yeah, because you do. You have to really take him seriously.
Yeah.
I think that the first thing I ever saw him in was probably Midnight Meat Train. And the second thing I ever saw him in was actually Wet Hot American Summer. They couldn't be more different. And so when I saw him in Wet Hot American Summer, I was like, what the hell is going on? Also a great show. Yeah. That is funny shit right there. Oh my god. Totally opposite. Maybe that's why I was able to watch him in like such like varying degrees.
Yeah. Oh man, that's funny. Okay.
So I am going to talk about Midnight Meat Train first, and then we will talk about Cabin in the Woods. And excuse my title for the episode, I am a 5-year-old. I just thought it was funny.
It is funny.
So the movie starts off with this guy waking up on one of the late trains in New York. So I used to live in Boston, and I used to go to New York all the time. And I've definitely taken the late trains, the very last ones in New York. And I used to take the late ones in Boston too. But I took them after seeing this movie, like years and years after seeing this movie, and growing up here in Houston and not having subways.
Yeah.
So my first real exposure to subways was after seeing this movie.
Oh my god.
And yeah, there's definitely times I started taking notes, and I asked myself, how often do you take riding the rails regularly for granted? You know, people in New York and Boston. I once blacked out on the T in Boston and nobody helped me.
Oh my god.
I got overheated and it was winter and I didn't take off my coat, and I got overheated and just like fell to the floor on the Boston T in the Red Line and woke up at my stop, luckily. People were fucking reading the newspapers and doing their thing. So like I knew subways were kind of this disconnected thing, this experience, especially for the locals. And as someone who didn't grow up with them, I was always really hyper vigilant about the subway. There was this one time when the Red Line hit a bad track and I felt it before the train stopped because I knew how the train should feel. Yeah. Because I took that same line every day, 2 or 3 times a day. And it made me think, how does this guy not realize that something is wrong? Right. Almost immediately. He seems maybe a little confused, but that could be like just woken up nap confusion. And he's kind of looking around, but the train is going way too fast. And I don't know, it just kind of made me think like, what has to happen for your routine to get broken up for you to understand something is wrong?
Especially, like you said, I want to say it's almost second nature for commuters who take the train, right? It's like, it's like you already know that you're going, forgive me, y'all, I've lived in Houston my whole life, so I don't take trains often. You take train A to B, like, you know exactly your route, so it's almost second nature, just like breathing. Take that. So what did get out of his normal routine? Yeah. Or, I don't know.
Well, and also how did the eventual victims you find out about, how did all of these victims not, I mean, there was only one victim. Right. One victim the entire time that figured out something was wrong. Yeah. As soon as as soon as the track changed, he was like, wait, this is supposed to be a local. And I was like, yes, you see the problem. Yeah. But I think that happened once too on the Green Line in Boston, where they took a tunnel that I wasn't used to them taking. Yeah. And I was like, oh no, I know how this ends. Yeah. Like, we were all about to be murdered.
Because see, I wouldn't know that. I would just think, oh, okay, this is just the route that we're going.
No. Anyway, so it was a very interesting way to watch this opening scene since living and being a commuter on subways and trains. So the interesting thing too is that I don't think that they ever say that they're in New York. No. You just know they're in New York because of the train station, the platforms, the tiny apartments. Yeah. So Leon is a photographer and he's trying to make it big in New York. But but he's kind of an ambulance chaser.
Yeah.
He has a police frequency radio. And he's trying to sell the photos to the New York Times and the Post. And he wants to break out into the real art world. So his friend, Jurgis, introduces him to one of his contacts in the art world, Susan Hoff. And in the interview, she asks him, what is your photography saying? What are you doing with it? And he says he's trying to capture the heart of the city. You know, and he says nobody's ever done it, which I thought was a little presumptuous of him.
Yeah.
Because I could think of a few photographers and I was like, all right, bro. Like,
yeah.
Come on. They did a pretty good job.
His ego was real big in this movie, even though he wasn't an egotistical maniac.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
It felt a little disconnected from his personality. Also, photography's been around long enough to make a statement like that, especially of New York City, where people are making their careers in New York City for decades before you.
Yeah.
How are you going to come to this woman and be like, nobody's ever truly captured the essence of the city?
Oh, God.
Okay.
Yeah.
Rude. But
why you turn him down?
yeah. And then he had the nerve to say the ugliness, because the photo she was looking at was of this businessman trying to lean away from a homeless man falling asleep on the train.
Yeah.
And she was like, next time, stay, be brave, and keep shooting, and get the real moment where the filth of the city or whatever touches the businessman. I was like, y'all, I mean, granted, I didn't live in New York, but I definitely visited New York enough to know that that's not the heart of the city.
Right.
It felt kind of offensive. So he goes through all that, and his partner at home, Maya, is studying some degree because she's going through her textbooks, starts telling him about what she just read, and she's like, you know, people are always talking about the city going back to the good old days, and she's like, it turns out there never were any good old days. It's always been a hellhole. And I was like, man, they are really dumping on New York.
They really are.
They really are. And it made me think about the early years of immigration into New York, where this one immigrant was interviewed, and he said the trap of New York is that they tell you the roads are paved with gold. And he says, but what they don't tell you, you find out, is that 1, the roads aren't paved, gold. 2, it's not paved. And 3, you're the one who's going to pave them. And I was like, oh, damn. I mean, that's definitely the immigrant experience. Like, let's be honest.
Yeah.
But I don't know, it felt like they were taking a lot of cheap shots at New York. I felt kind of bad. I feel like I'd be just as upset if someone was taking a bunch of cheap shots at Houston.
Yeah. It kind of like, when you're talking about, I'm like, sounds like some Biggie and Tupac type of like drama. Like it's someone from LA that made this movie dumping all over New York. Yeah. It's just horrible.
I know. Especially where he was centered. He wasn't centered in a shitty area.
Right.
So if the station he was constantly looking at was 14th and Beale, which is not really like, that's on the south side.
Yeah.
That's a nice area.
So why would they... I wonder if it just plays along with the mood of the movie, because I know it's like lots of dark blues and like grays and almost kind of... I told you, Gotham. Like I thought very much Gotham City, very dark. So I wonder if they just did that just to make it seem bleak almost. I don't know, but that's lame.
Well, and also because they never actually said they were in New York. I don't think, I'm pretty sure, that maybe they were just trying to play on that kind of mental shared image from the rest of the world of New York and what it is, or what it should be. I don't know. I just feel like they did it a disservice.
Yeah.
It was definitely Batman's Gotham and not like actual New York. Ugh,
before
whatever.
Sex and the City glamorized it or anything. You know what I mean? Like just kind of dirty and danky, and that's not right.
And then also the comment that Maya made, she was like, you know, with the murderers and how dirty it is. And I was like, guys, that's
every city.
Right.
Every city.
Anyway, so I had a lot of thoughts about New York watching just like the freaking opening few minutes, obviously. But Leon immediately becomes obsessed with his photography. And I think part of that is Susan's fault, because she told him, your photography is good, but it's basic. And if you had just been brave and sat through the next scene. And so he does. He like winds up going out in the streets and sees these 3 rowdy dudes. He follows them harassing this lady in the stairwell of the subway station. And he's still taking pictures because I guess he's got that mindset of stay and watch it play through. But as soon as she makes eye contact with him, he was like, okay, I can't actually watch this play through because then that's kind of gross. Yeah. So he goes and comes to her rescue, and the guys leave, and she's really grateful. And he takes pictures of her as she leaves, and he catches the hand of Mahogany holding the door open for her. And that's the first time you kind of meet Mahogany, which, yeah, it is a weird name, I guess. It is a weird
I told
name.
Sadina off air that that's a stripper name. So I couldn't take it seriously when they called him Mahogany. They just referred him as the butcher.
Yeah, and someone built like Vinnie Jones.
One of the things that I thought of in that scene was when he was taking pictures, I could see when she made eye contact with him that I could see in his mind he was thinking, should I continue to take pictures? His moral complex was coming into play, right?
Oh yeah, his moral compass for sure was like, this is the moment where either I become a gross person monetizing her abuse, or I go and help her.
Yeah.
But he finds out later that morning that he was very possibly the last person to see her alive, and he thinks the 3 men that were harassing her in the subway station have done something untoward. And he has all this evidence, and he takes it to the cops, and the head detective lady is like, oh, well, where did you go? How do you have all these photos of the harassment? Like, if you say the 3 guys left, then where did you go? If you were the last one that saw him. I was like, damn, you really are trying to turn that around.
Yeah.
Because if he did follow her, you would have CCTV footage of it, which he brings up. Yeah. And she was like, okay, whatever. And I was like, wow, you really are trying to gaslight this guy into believing that he's a better suspect than these 3 guys. And I was like, no, that's suspect. She's suspicious. There's something going on there. He definitely wasn't as nervous about her curiosity as he should have been, I feel.
Right. So I watched it twice, and the second time I watched it, I was just watching a lot of him. And I think early on his obsession with wanting to be successful clouded a lot of his judgments going on. And so I think with her, this is just my personal opinion, I think that he thought that if he had more evidence of other things, that maybe he would become more reliable as a witness. But that was just me. Just, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, he definitely did seem like he went, because initially when she first blew him off, he didn't seem concerned with being blown off. Yeah. He takes the picture of the woman being harassed in the train station and takes it to the curator. And the curator is like, yeah, this is what I want to see. I want to see more of this. Get me more. I found it interesting that out of all of the places in New York, it's not a very big island, but you can definitely walk it in a night. Out of all the places he went to go investigate for similar shots, he stuck to that train station. And it made me wonder, was he obsessed because he was the last one to see her alive there? Was it about the disappearance, or was it about chasing the location that gave him the big break?
Oh, it could be about chasing the location, but maybe also... No, I think it was chasing the location because, I mean, he went there every night almost.
Yeah, and I don't think that he was looking for the 3 guys.
No, they never came back up afterwards either, and it had to be the location. Yeah.
Maybe he was like superstitious or something?
Maybe, because this was before he knew who Mahogany was, right? It only makes sense that it was the location that drew him before he met Mahogany.
So that night that he runs into Mahogany again for the first time, like full-bodied Mahogany, is the night that he had a dream of meat hooks dripping in blood. And at first I was like, was that just a cut scene, and it just happened to be that the cut scene was that he woke up because he's on the verge of this big break, and so he goes down there. The more the movie progressed, and I didn't have this theory the first time I watched it, but the more the movie progressed, the more I began to become concerned that there was something calling to him.
Yeah, I completely forgot about the dream.
Because it's not the only one he has.
Right, it's not. And that was early on that he had that dream. Yeah. So maybe it was something that was calling to him at one point.
And it's entirely possible that his brain got suspicious something had happened to her, because the meat hooks were on the subway. But why meat hooks? Right. If you suspect that someone disappeared on the subway, your subconscious can file that information and distort it however it wants. But the reason why you dream is because your brain is filing information. Right. So it can only file information that it has. Yeah. It doesn't generate new information. Right. It's why they say when you have dreams and you see strangers in your dream, they're just like faces you've run into at least once in your life.
I love that. Right? Like, that's my favorite thing. I heard it said that the strangers you dream about are people you just walked on the street just kind of looking, and I'm like, oh, it's really just fascinating.
Yeah. So the meat hooks on the subway, his brain couldn't have generated that information unless he had had some exposure to that. Right. And if you've had exposure to that, that's probably a whole other problem. Right. Hey, why are you all wet? Huh? Were you playing in the tub? Oh my god. Oh, but he's so cute. Look at him.
I know. Look at you.
Washing his little face.
Okay.
Quit distracting us.
I know, like, we just sat there talking. We stopped everything.
I know, just to watch him clean his face. Oh my god. But yeah, I found a lot of that kind of weird, especially since the dream woke him up just in time for him to go investigate Mahogany coming back out of the station. So he sees Mahogany coming out of the train station early in the morning, and so I don't know why he followed Mahogany, if what it was that drew him to him, because Mahogany is very well dressed.
Yeah, very well dressed.
Like he could just be some
businessman.
Yeah. So that was another reason why I began to become suspicious about what was truly motivating him and driving him to the decisions he made. And Mahogany figures out he's following him and like kind of confronts him. Mahogany also never speaks.
No.
So the big silent type was kind of, and he lives at a hotel. And I feel like early on they were trying to set you up to believe that this was a serial killer. And you find out later that Mahogany works as a butcher in one of the meat processing plants. And they were definitely trying to lay seeds early on as a serial killer who took trophies or...
Yeah, I thought he was a serial killer, yes. Yep.
So he becomes suspicious of Mahogany. I think that's when he takes the photos of Mahogany and the original photos of the woman being harassed in the station, because he shows up in the background of one of those photos, and he tries getting the policewoman to understand that this is a better lead than the three guys or even him. Again, she blows him off, and it becomes really frustrating for him.
Yeah.
Because at this point, he begins to obsess over proving this stranger, this butcher, is the real murderer.
Yeah.
Then finding photos for his potential gallery opening.
Yeah.
Which is frustrating his partner, and it's frustrating his friend.
Yeah.
Because his friend is like, bro, I got you this massive, like, you're finally going to make it. Why would you do this?
Right.
And he's like, no, I got it. Like, this is my side job. Stalking this man. And he follows him to the butcher place, and he gets real weird about it.
Yeah.
Especially, okay, so we talk all the time about boundaries and what horror teaches you. If you suspect this man to be a serial killer, why are you following him to his job?
I know.
And he's a butcher.
One of the first things you learn when you watch horror is do not follow the crazy man.
Right.
And he didn't listen to the horror trope, I guess. He didn't watch enough horror in his life, because he was clearly very obsessed with this man.
Yeah, a lot of his decisions were very suspect. And I don't think that his obsessive behavior really excuses a lot of them.
No.
But then I started looking for signs that the train itself was something to be wary of, because the trains obviously were going somewhere where there weren't cameras or there weren't like other people. And when the train goes down the track the first time, they show that it's going down a red lit track, which is, don't go down those.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, so the train driver's in on it too. And one of the times when he's stalking him, he's down in the train station, I guess at 14th and Beale is where they are, because that's the main hub that he works out of. And he gets there at some point during the day, and Mahogany just sits down on the bench with his big old bag and just sits there and stares motionlessly for hours. They time lapse it, and he's just sitting there. But the suspicious thing was that a station cop clocks him, kind of notices him sitting there by himself, and then never does anything about it. Now, as someone who has used transportation, they are a little bit more vigilant than that.
Right, because this guy's not playing a guitar. He's not trying to make any type of money. Like,
he's not checking schedules.
Right. He's not checking schedules. He's not checking his watch. Like, nothing. He's just sitting there with his hand over his bag, just sitting.
That is very suspicious.
Yeah.
So when he finally gets up to get on one of the mini trains that have already come and gone from the station. Also, I want to say that not that many lines share that many tracks. There were too many trains that came through that station for him to have waited for just the right one. There had to have been repeats at some point throughout them.
Okay.
So if you're at Union Station and A, B, C, D, and F go through it, so you should theoretically be getting on the 5th train because you are coming back through the cycle, the local or express or whatever. You shouldn't wait through 8 or 9 trains, because now you've gone through the cycle of the same lines like 2 or 3 times. So that was really weird. Right? Yeah. And I was like, I don't like any of this.
Right.
But then I was even madder, because when Mahogany gets up to go get on whatever train is special for him, Leon goes to take more pictures of him. But as soon as he goes to get a closer look, that station cop, the same one, is like, hey, come here, give me your camera. You can't be doing that here.
Right.
And he was like, it's just a camera. And he was like, no, we're at orange threat level, da-da-da. And he was like, what do you mean? And it's just a camera. And he's like, I don't know, it could be a bomb. And I was like, what? the camera, and it's not even a good camera.
No, it's not.
It was that little itty bitty Polaroid camera.
Yeah, it looks very cheap.
Right? Didn't have a fancy lens or nothing.
Yeah.
And I was like, so you go after that camera and not the big dude who sat unmoving for hours with a big ass bag?
Mm-hmm.
No. I was like, the cops are in on it.
Yeah.
That's why this station is special.
Yeah.
I was like, that cop, I don't like this.
Yeah.
So I'm already suspicious of everybody.
Yeah.
At this point. So Leon is going a little crazy. He's becoming really obsessive, and his girlfriend is trying to make him feel better. She's like, people go missing all the time.
Right.
And that set something off in him, and he was like, people do go missing all the time. It felt like a Scooby-Doo moment.
Yeah.
Why that had never occurred to
right.
him.
I don't know.
Right?
Because it was.
Right? Because she was hitting on him too, put moves on him.
Right.
And he was like, I'll be back.
Right.
And when a dude is like, no,
right.
like, let me leave.
Yeah.
I don't know, just it felt
Clearly his mental state is frayed at this point.
Right. Felt so weird. So he goes to the library and he goes to the microfiche and he's looking for instances of missing people. He sees that there have been many articles about the butcher who's, under suspicion for murder. And he's like, I've done it. But then you look at the date and the date's from 1895 and you're like, no, man, you ain't
didn't
done
do
it.
it.
No. Mahogany is not from 1895. Like, it's just not possible. And his partner, Maya, is even like, I don't get what you're saying. Like, is he time travel? Like, is he reincarnated? Like, how are you using this as your basis? And he was like, no, it's obvious. And I was like, no.
It's not obvious.
No,
and you can't convince him otherwise.
No, he has proven it in his mind. Okay. But he does see 1895 is just the oldest date you see, but there's also 1911 and 1950. So something that's happening with regularity. And he thinks that Mahogany is the timeless figure that is somehow carrying on a century of murder and disappearing. And again, the cop is like, no, that's not possible.
Which I don't blame him for this one.
Right. That one, like, in all fairness, that was very...
I would laugh.
Yeah. He definitely seems like the crazy person now.
Right.
Which, like, kudos to them.
Yeah.
They definitely helped him paint himself into a corner of being crazy.
Yeah.
Also, I was wondering about, because at one point Mahogany, during one of the murders, he hooks someone on, actually, I think it was Ted Raimi, which was cool, because I like Ted Raimi. But he hooks him on a meat hook, and then, like, just throws him to the top of the subway and throws him back down. And I was like, Vinnie Jones is big. He ain't that big.
No. He's not.
No. So does he have, like, superhuman strength, or?
You know what? I would assume so, based on what happened in the end between him and Leon. So I would definitely be comfortable saying, yes, he does have superhuman strength.
Yeah, so whatever it is that you do as this entity Mahogany, like, you're no longer human.
Yeah.
Which makes sense, because I don't think Driver was human either.
No, I don't think so.
No.
Yeah.
So the driver of the Midnight Meat Train...
Yeah.
Oh, wait. Okay, so at one point earlier in the movie, when Leon and Maya are having sex after he proposes to her, the next scene is the train going through the tunnels. And I was like, ha, I see what you did there. It's called Midnight Meat Train. And now he's plowing her, and there's a train going through a tunnel. It's real subtle, guys. Real subtle.
I missed it.
I mean, maybe I was primed looking for it because I mean, my very first thought of this was a porno, so maybe I'm just looking for every instance of that inside joke. Who knows? So I had a lot of questions about Mahogany. I almost called him the butcher. I have a lot of questions about Mahogany. Why does he work at the meat processing plant?
Yeah.
It's so after Leon falls him one time, he wakes up in an abandoned station under a meat processing plant. And it's like, hey, baby. What are you doing? What are you doing, baby?
Smell something, I guess.
Yeah. Gonna go hang out in the... Nope. Okay. Bye. So the whole meatpacking plant, the only thing I can figure out is that whatever person happens to be Mahogany at the time is working at the meat processing plant so that they are better equipped to do what they need to do.
Oh, maybe so.
There's lots of places that are above abandoned stations in New York.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be the meat packing plant.
Right.
Now, I do understand why he lives in the hotel, because you can pay cash there and you don't have to be like with a name and da-da-da, and that's easy to do. There's nothing in there there for you. So yeah, living in the hotel, easy, low profile, cash.
Yeah.
But the meat processing plant, the only thing I could come up with was that one issue.
I mean, honestly, because I remember thinking he doesn't need sleep, obviously, because he goes to his hotel room and then he goes straight to work. And then at first I thought, oh, well, maybe he's just trying to maintain a low profile. So if anyone says anything about why he has that bag, he's just like, I'm a butcher. He never talks, so...
He never talks, but also he's way too well dressed to be a butcher.
Yeah.
I think part of the reason why he dresses like that is to get away with, he's so white male privilege.
Yeah.
He is so unassuming.
Yeah.
He looks like a businessman with that bag. And that bag is like very classic doctor house call bag. I don't know. His whole persona was kind of built kind of weird.
We really didn't get a lot about him, and that kind of made me mad.
I also began to wonder how many people he was killing a night, because initially it looks like he's only killing one person.
Yeah, maybe 3 max at one point, I think I saw, with the 2 guys and the woman.
Right.
So how many was he killing on average? Did they pick up multiple people in the train? I never saw more than 1 or 2. So,
no.
Yeah.
But there is one time when they show that there's like 10 people hanging from hooks.
Yeah.
So maybe the train is making multiple stops for those last stops for the stations, and then whatever poor sucker happens to be the last train for the night is now dead. Because he definitely wasn't like hunting people.
No, he wasn't.
It was once they jumped the track to the closed track, that was when he set about his business.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Everyone could die.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was just random and wrong place, wrong time.
It's kind of weird. And no one seems to notice all these missing people either until the model. And it sounds like she got dropped.
Yeah, it just seems to kind of fade away after a little bit for her.
Which, I mean, if the cops are in on it, then that...
Obviously they can bury it.
Yeah. Well, maybe it goes even further up than the cops, too, because of where City Hall stop was.
Yeah.
So an interesting thing about this show is that the more you go, the more you see the abandoned stations, and New York does have a lot of abandoned train stations. Some of them are abandoned because they collapsed. I know a few of them collapsed after 9/11. Some of them are abandoned because they flooded. They had bad infrastructure. Some of them were abandoned because they ran out of funds halfway through. And then some of them just get closed because I don't know, I guess they don't have foot traffic or something.
I mean, maybe, yeah. Or maybe because another one opened, more people use that one than,
So all of the abandoned stations, a lot of that is very possible. But like I said, there was only one victim. Out of everybody he had, only one victim noticed that their train wasn't following the routine they expected. Yeah. And he almost got mahogany.
Yeah.
I mean, he put up a hell of a fight.
He sure did. And at first I thought, oh, he's a fellow butcher.
Oh.
Because it just, the way he was fighting back, I was like, oh, he's a fellow butcher. But no, he wasn't.
So you know what's weird is that in the cast, so like how Driver is just listed as Driver?
Yeah.
This guy's listed as Guardian Angel.
Oh.
Yeah, and I don't know why.
Because Leon was on the train.
Oh. Huh.
Because if I remember correctly, Leon was on the train and he saw it happening.
Yeah.
And Mahogany came after him and he was able to get off.
Yeah. Huh. Well, and then that poor guy died.
Yeah.
But things are escalating quickly for Leon.
Yeah.
He's getting more obsessed. He's clearly becoming unhinged, but he's dreaming more. So the next time he dreams, it's very clearly not some garbled information his brain is filing away, because the next dream he has is of hanging upside down from a hook, having his throat slit open, and looking up to see that he himself was the butcher. So he's being enticed, being groomed.
Yeah.
To take over for Mahogany, which was so weird. It's a whole other level of supernatural.
It really is. Now that we're talking about it, I never put those together, and I kind of washed the dreams away, kind of put them away, not really thinking about them. But yeah, he is sort of being groomed. And now I'm wondering, was the pull initially to the train station with the girl and the 3 guys? Was it the pull stronger and he just happened upon her?
Well, that's a good question, because when I began to wonder whether or not he was being manipulated by some other force, was it the city? Because he was an ambulance chaser. The photography that you initially see him coming up to is a pedestrian gets hit by a car and gets thrown through a window. Yeah. And he took a picture of that scene trying to sell it to the Post. So he's clearly already immersing himself in the more tragic events of the city.
Yeah.
So maybe the city chose him on some level.
Maybe.
Because that was another thing, is that when he's starting to unravel, his partner, Maya, she begs him, stop going out at night, stop shooting, don't follow the butcher. The cops will figure it out if he's the murderer. And she's like, I want you to start shooting what you love, what you want. And she goes, what do you love? And he says, you, I love you. And it's like, but that's not what you told the curator.
Yeah.
Because when she asked you what you're looking for in your photography and you said the heart of the city, that's not the same.
Well, and when he's taking pictures of her after, he's like really struggling.
Oh, he's crying.
Yeah.
And he's apologizing.
Yeah.
Because he keeps seeing the assaults.
Yeah.
And Mahogany. He's being changed.
Yeah, at that point, I think mentally he's gone. He's officially gone.
And she's very unhappy. But then she has a weird change of heart where she all of a sudden believes him. And she she brings in their poor friend Jurgis. And she's like, look, he got proof of it the other night. He came home. He was a mess. When Leon came home from the abandoned station under the meat processing plant, he had a ruined symbol carved onto his chest. And I guess, maybe that was what made her believe it.
Maybe so.
Kind of a weird, I don't know. I feel like for as distressed as she was, I would have jumped to the conclusion that he did it to himself.
Yeah. I almost thought that she wanted to fix it for him because I wrote down in here, Maya deserved better. She deserved a better man. But she also reminded me of a lot of women who see their partners struggling and want to fix the problem because hopefully it'll fix what's deteriorating in their relationship. So maybe she sees how it's getting to him. She wants it to come to an end so that they can get on with their lives. That was my take on it. And then when she got into it, she was like, oh yeah, he was right.
Well, and she starts kind of unraveling really fast too.
Yeah.
Because Jurgis is like, are you sure? Like, this is like, seems kind of crazy. And she's like, no, she's got crazy eyes. And it was so weird. But yeah, so she takes Jurgis to the hotel where Mahogany lives to go find proof. Yeah. Maybe they think they're going to find the camera.
Maybe. Oh yeah, because the camera got stolen at one point. Yeah.
So they're going to find proof that Leon is right. And that was a terrible decision.
Yeah.
Like, damn, that was, y'all.
Poor Jurgis and his collateral damage ass. Which I don't feel bad for him because so the actor was on Desperate Housewives, which y'all know I watch other things, so let me just go ahead. And he played a mean character on there, so I was okay with his character dying.
Damn. All right, well, the whole climax of the thing is that Jurgis gets killed and she goes to the cops, he disappears.
Yeah, he disappears.
And she goes to the same cop lady. Maybe they should really just start going to a different cop.
Right.
But,
they went to the same precinct.
Lady, right? So they go to the same detective and she's like, well, the cops went and they didn't find anything. And the tenant says, which also I was like, the tenant don't say shit. Right. Because like, we know he don't talk. So the tenant just wants what you took from him and the rail schedule.
The schedule,
dating all the way back from the 1911, I think, is the first one.
Oh, I didn't even take a note the dates.
Yeah, it has the year of the train schedule and like the train schedule. So he's got one from 1911 and one from 1950. And she turns it around on her like she did with Leon. She's like, well, you've already admitted to breaking and entering. Right. And, you've stolen something of his. And she's like, you can't give it back. It has murder evidence. And not really. It's just like the train schedule. But
the gaslighting is really strong in this movie.
Yes. Oh, I noticed something when Maya was talking to the police lady that I didn't notice before. She's wearing a necklace with the same symbol as Mahogany's ring. Yeah.
I didn't notice that. The officer, right?
Yeah.
Oh.
Because when I saw the necklace, I was like, wait, that's the exact same insignia.
I totally missed it.
Because you don't really get a good close-up of Mahogany's ring until the very, very end. Yeah. But it did. It was the exact same thing as her necklace. And she's like, I'm gonna go save the world. I don't know. She makes terrible decisions. Maya does. She gets on the train because she has the train schedule. Meanwhile, Leon has decided to dress up in this like full butcher metal chainmail garb to go wage war with the butcher.
Yeah. When he leaves the arch of, I got a train to catch. I was like, man, shut up, Bradley Cooper. No one takes you seriously.
Damn. Yeah, so he goes and he dresses up. The weird thing, though, he goes to the abandoned station under the meatpacking plant.
Oh, right, he doesn't go to the actual train station.
No, so like, bro, how did you think you were going to get on? And so And then he does. He jumps on the end of the train.
Oh, right, because he sees Maya running, which that was a really good cinematic
Yes.
part. Yeah, I
They
really
had a
liked
lot of great shots, like the shot in the pool of blood, and then you see the reflection, or the lady whose head got thrown off, and she sees her body, but then they zoom into the reflection of her eye, and it turns the perspective away. The cinematography was really well done in certain places.
Oh, yeah. I hated watching the butcher, like, pull away the eyes, and so I was like, ugh.
You know, I still can't figure out why they were taking out the eyeballs. I understand why the hair was being removed, and the nails and the teeth, because it's harder to digest, but the eyeballs are just squishy.
Maybe for the driver?
Maybe.
I don't know.
He did eat that tongue.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe.
Maybe.
Or maybe that's what they do in meatpacking plants. No, because I see eyeballs in the dead cows all the time, and the chickens.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Maybe it was just for gore factor.
Maybe. Just to show that they could do it.
Yeah.
That their effects were that good. Because the effects were good.
Yeah.
I mean, they had the retinal cord and everything. Yeah. I was like, that's really good.
I was like, this is so gross.
Oh, see, my mom was an eye doctor, and so I was like, that's really well done. I was like, that is so good.
Like, my eyes hurt. My eyes are hurting after that scene.
My first toy, you know, when you're a kid and you have those blocks that, like, you start out in one big shape and you pull apart and you put back together into the big shape. Mine was an eyeball from my mom's desk at work. It was like an eyeball paperweight. It, like, was bisected. You take it off and, like, you pull out the iris and the like all these other pieces and you put it back together. That was mine.
No wonder you do a horror podcast.
Right.
That's so funny. Oh, I love
That was my favorite toy.
That is so cute. Oh, man.
It was really big, too. It was, like, this big.
Yeah. Oh, my God.
So you could, like, pull off, like, the vessels and stuff.
Yeah.
Anyway,
wow.
It was a teaching tool.
Right, it was. It's a really good educational toy.
So he jumps on the back of the train. It was just, he poorly executed. And, I mean, Maya was making bad decisions, too. So Jurgis is on the train. He's with the other bodies of these people that have, like, somehow also...
I know. I wish they would have connected the dots there a little bit better.
Yeah, and how many people were disappearing. Because there's also tent encampments in places like Seattle and downtown Houston and stuff like that. I began to wonder, are the majority of the bodies just people from tent encampments under the stations?
Yeah.
Because they do have that in New York.
Right.
There's lots and lots of homeless encampments under those stations. Theoretically, when the homeless disappears, fewer people are looking for them because they were probably already listed as a missing person to begin with.
Right. Granted, we know that the police were corrupted and were in on this, but there was never an outcry. Because a couple times they were watching the news, and there was never an outcry from families, like looking for loved ones or anything. And clearly there was a lot of people that are being killed. So I don't know. They didn't do that one well for me.
No, me neither. So they get on the train and Mahogany, actually I didn't really watch the fight between Mahogany and Leon because when it came to gore stuff, I was like, oh, whatever.
Yeah.
So they fight on the train and Leon pushes Mahogany out of the train and him and Maya are like, oh, we did it. We survived. Yeah. We defeated the bad guy. When really Driver was the person they should have been concerned with. When he was fighting Guardian Angel.
Yeah.
And Driver heard the commotion and he had to shoot Guardian Angel. And Driver was looking at Mahogany and he was like, I'm just so disappointed in you, Mahogany. And I was like, ooh.
I know.
Damn. And Mahogany looked like really chastised.
Yeah.
I was like, shit, if Driver's the one you gotta worry about. So they stop, they pull into this abandoned station and Driver comes out and he's like, step away from the meat. And it's basically a feeding tray for these creatures. So they're in City Hall Station, which is a station that was abandoned. I couldn't find an article for why. Of course, that kind of feeds into the whole, you know, local lore for New York about all these haunted places and mole people and things like that they joke about in New York. Or what was it? The Rat King.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
I saw a Monster Hunter show once where they went to go look for the Rat King.
Oh my god.
And like, you know, the alligators that get flushed down people's toilets or the massive anacondas or whatever it is. So they're there and Driver is revealing everything now. He's like, you just don't understand. Mahogany was doing a service. He was providing meals to the creatures under the world and that have been around longer than any human thing and all this stuff, like very old gods, which is why we chose these two movies. So we were continuing the old god theme of Lovecraft country. And except they're not gods, they're like just creatures, like lizard people.
When I was looking, I was trying to, because I didn't realize this was a Clive Barker film or book. And side note, love Clive Barker, so I don't know why I didn't know this was, because maybe I would have watched it sooner. But when I was reading about it, I saw that in the book form, the creatures are actually the rulers of New York, and they require this sacrifice so that just because they're the rulers of New York, they always have been.
Yeah.
And the way I was reading it, it seemed like like they're the ones who reveal themselves to Leon. But I mean, that would just take me reading the book, which I'm going to request after we're done.
I mean, that would kind of play into him being manipulated, there being some supernatural force driving him.
Yeah.
Because the driver then kills Maya and tells him, like, you're the new Mahogany. Okay. Also, driver was like, he didn't have the heart for it anymore. And I was like...
He had plenty heart for it.
I was like, if this was Mahogany at his worst game,
right?
What was he at his peak?
I don't want to know.
No, that was upsetting to hear. So Leon is now the new Mahogany. He lives in the hotel room. He wears the same clothes. Mm-hmm. The cop is in the apartment preparing him. I also noticed on the news, it was talking about an international delegation coming to visit and that the mayor was going to show them transit infrastructure. And I was like, oh, this whole delegation's about to get sacrificed.
Yeah.
I was like, people will notice about that, though. Yeah. So that was weird. I was like, okay, either the mayor is in on it or he's not, and that's just a weird connection because an international delegation going missing in New York, that's going to make the news.
That's going to make the news, yeah.
But the very weird. Right? I was like, what? Okay, so the very, very last scene, you don't know Leon is the new Mahogany yet. Yeah. I mean, you do. Because, like, the driver tells him.
The driver tells him.
But they frame, whenever he's getting dressed and stuff, they don't show his face.
Yeah.
It was weird framing, trying to convince you that it was like a new Mahogany, but you know it's Leon. So when
you knew it was Leon. Yeah.
So when the camera zooms in on Leon's back and he does that like quick head turn, like the little gopher and that meme, it made me laugh. Not serious at all.
His clothes were a little too big. The haircut looked like crap on him. Yeah. Like they styled him the same way they styled Mahogany, and you're just like,
It just didn't work the same way.
No.
But also Vinnie Jones takes up more space visually. His presence is bigger.
And in all of the other movies I've seen him in, he's not very vocal in the ones that I've seen him in. So I think he's got it down a little bit more of the acting without saying anything, you know? Because I felt like he was more terrifying without having said a word, whereas Bradley Cooper was not terrifying at all in this. Like, just laughable almost.
I mean, he plays obsessive well.
He played that really well.
Yeah, and I think the only reason why it feels like he unhinged too fast, that was more of a story pacing.
Yeah.
So that was the movie. It was really good. I loved it back in 2008 when I first watched it. Very classic. There's something right below your feet.
People are carrying on their daily lives.
Yeah. Yeah, and you never know what's under your feet, but also what people are doing to quote unquote keep you safe. So this is actually where the Lonely Island thing comes in.
Yeah.
So Jennifer got here, and in pre-production, I was like, you have to listen to this Lonely Island song. And she was listening to it, and I could see in your face, you were like, Sadina's lost it.
Yeah, I was like, why is she making me listen to it? It was funny, don't get me wrong.
Right, because like Lonely Island is funny.
Yeah.
But I needed her to hear the last chorus, because that was where this movie takes place.
Yeah.
So please don't, if there's anything wrong with doing this, reciting these lyrics, because we're not going to take the risk of playing it, but if there's any, risk of reading the lyrics, I apologize. But the lyrics are, now on the surface it probably seems like I should quit, because I spend every day getting punched in the dick. But at night I travel down into the subway, wearing chainmail locked and loaded for gunplay, and battle the gigantic fire-breathing mutant rats. If I fucking quit, who the fuck would do that? I'll give you a hint, the answer is no one. That's why I'm in the sewer dressed up like a shogun, because on the equinox a hellgate springs, releasing hounds wreathed in the blood of kings, and no one even knows, they just think I'm a dork. But I still kill those fucking dogs because I run New York.
I was floored when that part played. I was like,
Your eyes got real wide.
Yeah. Like, did they watch the movie and then write the song? What?
That local lore is just there.
Yeah.
Especially with all the abandoned stations.
Right. Oh, God, that was just chills.
It was so funny. I love Lonely Island, but when I first heard that song, I was like, oh my God.
Yeah, that was so good.
I think that's why we have so many Hollow Earthers,
One of my takeaways from Midnight Meat Train was that obvious red flags and how Leon ignored all the red flags because he let his obsession get carried away. And one of the things I told Sadina was, as I was watching it made me want to reach out to my photographer friends and artist friends and ask them if there was ever a subject that carried that level of obsession with them, because that was an unhealthy dose of obsession there.
Yes. But I think it had to have had some supernatural bent on it.
Yeah, now that we talk about it with the supernatural elements, I mean, I know that there were supernatural elements in there, but I didn't put it together.
With the dreams?
Yeah.
The dreams definitely make it seem like there's an outside influence on him.
Yeah. And the influence had to get to Maya too, to sacrifice her to make him become Mahogany.
Mm-hmm.
Like that, it just makes sense. Such a good movie. And with that, we're gonna go into Cabin in the Woods. When we started the podcast, I was so excited to talk about Cabin in the Woods. It's just one of my favorite movies. And I told Sadina in pre-production that this movie changed the way I watched horror. Because I went in thinking I knew everything that was going to happen and I was talking about it. And then it turned on its side and I didn't know anything that was going to happen. So now I just enjoy the ride and I let it take me where it wants me to go. So just a basic short summary from the title. 5 college teens go away to a remote cabin in the woods. And then all hell breaks loose, literally.
Yeah. They start giving off clues in the very beginning that something is wrong because he was like, oh, this cousin I've never heard of invited me to take his cabin for the weekend. And one of the girls is like, don't you think that's suspicious? And he's like, spray break! Like something dumb like that. Some dude bro thing.
So I broke this down into a couple different ways rather than doing just a long summary and talking about the different types. We'll go through what happens in the story as we talk about these different breakdowns. So we have our 5 major characters, Dana, Kurt, Jules, Holden, and Marty, and they're the teens that are going into the cabin. We have Sitterson and Hadley, and the movie jumps back and forth between this organizational facility and then the cabin. And Hadley and Sitterson are kind of your everyday workers.
Yeah.
It opens on them over coffee talking about his wife has already baby-proofed the room and they're not even trying to conceive.
Yeah, it felt very Dilbert.
Yeah, very Dilbert. And it's so weird, but then you get clues because they're like, Stockholm just went down, and they're like, oh, you can never trust the Swedes. If you want something done, you get an American to do it, or something like that.
Or no, they say the Japanese will come through.
Yeah, the Japanese will come through. They're first, we're second. And so you're kind of like, well, what's happening? But you don't quite know. Daniel Truman, he was a new security guard, part of the military, and this was his first day on the job. And they meet him and they talk to him and they're like, you know what you're supposed to do? And he was like, yes, I've been informed. And you're still kind of like, what are you guys doing?
Yeah, because it makes it sound like these 2 office dorks have higher clearance than this guy.
Yeah, and the way these 2 office dorks talk about the rest of the organization, you're kind of like, well, what is it with these 2? They don't seem smart to me at all.
No.
But I think that's part of what Cabin in the Woods did, because it took a lot of horror tropes and kind of turned them on their sides.
Yes.
And exposed them almost.
It looks like it's going to be like Office Space, like an office comedy. The way that they talk to each other and talk about the other departments. It's like, don't they rag on R&D?
Yeah.
They're always talking about how bad decisions they make or something.
Yeah, and then they talk about the chem department because they're the reasons why they failed one year. So, and you're just like, okay, just generic office gossip almost. And you're just kind of like, okay, this is supposed to be a scary movie. How does this fit in? But it sort of sets up as a slasher film. Y'all should know by now, I am a big fan of 70s, 80s, 90s slasher films. That's my favorite genre. So I was like, oh yeah, so like, give me more. So immediately I picked out the 5 characters, but I had it wrong. So when I first saw it, I thought Dana was the promiscuous girl because our first scene on her, she's wearing a shirt and her panties.
Well, and didn't she sleep with the professor?
And she was sleeping with the professor. And Kurt, he gave off jock vibes. So I got him right. Jules, I thought she was just like the girl next door, sort of like the friend type. Yeah. I already pegged her as the final girl, but I didn't really think about the blonde hair. I didn't think about the blonde hair.
And wasn't that bottle blonde? She had just dyed it.
Yeah, she had just dyed it. Holden is the scholar, and I thought he was just another jock athlete. And Marty is the fool.
He's shaggy.
Yeah, he's shaggy. But he's a woke fool.
Yeah.
He's definitely more aware than most.
Well, he's only aware, though, because he's smoking.
Right, yeah. So now the reason I put it is because they have these generic horror tropes because this is the order that they're going to get killed in, right? But they turned it on its side because Dana, like I said, she had her panties on and they were just kind of exposed to everybody. She slept with the professor. And she even tells you later on in the movie, she's like, I'm not used to like kissing. And she's like, I don't usually do that. And she's like, wait a minute, I can't say that because I do that. And she recognizes that she is not this prudish person. Kurt, who plays the dumb jock, he's a sociology major and he's on academic academic scholarship. So,
Yeah.
like, the tropes that they're being forced into are not necessarily who they are. Jules, who I thought as the girl next door, is actually the whore. Holden, who is the scholar, he's actually the dumb jock in real life, the athlete. But all of a sudden he can read Latin. But the only reason you know that he's the athlete is because he catches the football in the beginning, then his body when he takes his shirt off, whatever.
Okay, whatever.
I mean, it was nice.
Yeah.
Like, they could have given me some more on the athletic part.
No, I definitely was fine with it.
And of course, Marty, like I said, he's the fool, but he's the most observant of the five.
Yeah. He would have been my mom's favorite character.
Yeah.
Like the one who was like super enlightened, but only when he was so baked out of his mind.
Yeah. And so those are the 5 characters that are main characters. And then, of course, we have the 2 in the organization.
You forgot to mention that Jules,
Jules.
the bottle blonde,
Yes.
that she's on her doctor track.
Yeah, she's a med student.
Yeah.
Yeah, and she plays very much into the dumb blonde trope, too, which is it's so funny. She does it really well, too. So next I'm going to go into the actual story. We get our first jump scare when the 2 guys are talking and they're driving their little golf cart and the title card comes up. And it comes up really suddenly, loud music. And I remember I jumped in the theater when it came.
That must be a theater jump scare then, because it definitely didn't get me in my home.
Yeah, it was definitely a theater jump scare. I was like, I'm just going through very typical scary movie type stuff. The second one was the very obvious warning in the gas station when they pull up. It's beat down, run down. They're like, does this even take gas? And Marty goes, I think it's barter gas.
He doesn't take the credit card?
Yeah, doesn't take the credit card. I think it's barter gas. Mordecai is his name. And I was like, like
religious. Because Marty says, he's like, oh yeah, that's the one you want. The religious guy and the creepy.
Yeah, like they followed it to a T with that warning. They're asking, sir, we need to get to Tillerman Road. And he's like, oh, you're wanting to go to the old Buckner place? And Already's like, okay, you don't need to go there. And he's like, yeah, my cousin just bought that house. Like, no, don't go. Of course, they ignore him and they go. And then they go through the tunnel and you see the bird flying. Dude, that freaked me out.
That may have been my first jump scare, is when the bird crashes into the whatever
force
that
field
is.
Or whatever. Yeah, that was my second jump. I was like, oh.
Yeah, that one got me. I was like, oh no.
When they were at the gas station, I was like, oh, okay, we're going into a haunted cabin. Like, I don't want to be here. I'm so sick of ghosts. Because at that time, there was a lot of ghost movies. And I was like, I'm done with it. I'm done with that. So I wanted to leave. But then when the bird crashed, I was like, oh no. I don't know what this is. I'm staying.
Yeah. Well, and then I think that shortly after the gas station scene, they're back in the office. And don't they say something about the first checkpoint being met?
Yeah. So that's one of my favorite scenes. So they're talking about the first checkpoint. They're talking with the lab technician from the chem department.
Who is the lady from Angel? She played a poor woman who got possessed by a god.
I didn't watch Angel.
Oh, so good.
I was kind of heartbroken with Buffy for a minute, so I missed Angel.
Oh.
So.
I would recommend trying to get into Angel now. It was
I need to rewatch Buffy anyway, so I'm gonna go through the whole. But that was Wendy Lynn, and she was played by Amy Acker.
I like her.
And so they talk about the first threshold being met, and Mordecai calls, and they have him on speaker. That's right. And like Mordecai talks in prose, so he's like giving them all the prose, and they're like yeah, and they have him on speaker, and so he's talking very serious. He goes, "Am I on speakerphone?" Hadley's like, "Oh, I'm so sorry. Let me take you off." Clearly leaving him on speakerphone, which is something we all did back in the day. And so he's going back into his like Bible prose. He's like, "Am I still on speakerphone?" And they're just cracking up. It's so funny.
Well, and it's such mean girl office tactics, you know.
They're just laughing. And so already I'm like, this movie, I don't know what to expect from this movie.
And the security guy, he's rolling, he's so over it.
Yeah. But he does smirk. I think because of the ridiculous of what that guy was saying, Mordecai. Because he was sticking to very old school slasher film warnings. And they're just keeping him on speaker, just cracking up.
That was such a good scene.
It was a good scene. So next they get into the cabin and they have their typical fun day where they're out on the lake and they're playing around and everything seems great, which is very stereotypical of horror back in the 80s and the 90s.
The summer camp.
The summer camp, yeah. They're having just a load of fun and you're like, oh, shit's about to go down. I know. I don't know if you know, but I know. The more fun they have, the more horror they're gonna have later. And it's at this time that they're having that. We're getting some more background with the organization. They're planning out a lot of details, and it's at that point where we realize that they mess with the dye in Jules's hair, that they've made it so that it's a slow release drug that's going into her system to make her dumber and make bad decisions.
Which is weird, because, like, I don't think that actually, whatever, it's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, when they tried explaining that, I was like, I don't think that's how science works.
No.
You could be, like, drugging her, but you can't actually lower her IQ.
No.
You can just drug her.
No, you cannot lower her IQ. But considering she's the first person to die, they didn't spend much time on her. So night falls, they are playing a game of truth or dare. And this is where we kind of see where Jules is being more risque, and she makes out with one of those wall-mounted animals.
That was so gross.
Yeah, I had to fast forward that last night when I was watching. I didn't like this the first time I saw it. I don't want to watch it again.
No, I also don't like the way that they catcalled over it, because really, that's turning you on is weird necrophilia and bestiality?
Yeah. Like, I kind of almost wanted the wolf to come alive and kill her, but it didn't. And I was like, well, okay. So then they go to Dana, and this is where Chris Hemsworth character Kurt becomes more of the dumb jock, kind of aggressive alpha male jock, because it's her turn for truth or dare, and he's like, truth, I know you're not going to take the dare, and like really baiting her.
Yeah, kind of a dick about it.
Yeah. And so she goes, dare. And then all of a sudden the like cellar door just shoots open. This is where another trope comes in. Very stupid explanations about things that you cannot explain. Because Kurt goes, maybe the wind blew it open. And Marty goes, how is that possible? We're inside.
Marty he's the real hero.
I put that in here because he is the hero.
Yeah.
And they go down into the cellar, and this is where we get that they have to make bad decisions, and they have to be punished. And Hadley or Sitterson, one of the two, says if they don't transgress, they can't be punished. So this is where you see that this is part of a bigger picture. There's something bad going on. And so in the cellar, which is one of my favorite scenes, there's a bunch of trinkets and a bunch of different items just laid out everywhere. And they're like,
the mermaid. I've never seen one.
Yes. So it cuts to the organization. All the staff is there, and they're taking bets. They're taking bets. I think the mechanics are like, Hadley goes, oh, this is the mechanics. This is what they said last year. And he's like, if they were creative, they'd be something else. They wouldn't be mechanics. And the intern for the day chooses what the mechanic says. Like, I'm going to split it with them.
You know what? The intern, too, was also in Buffy.
Oh my god! Well, I mean, Joss Whedon explains it, yeah. So, you see them taking bets. The security guard, he's kind of disgusted. And the lab technician, Wendy Lynn, is telling him, like, everyone's blowing off steam. It's sort of their way of coping with what they have to do. Because it's something that they have to do. Which comes into play the necessary evil trope. You're doing it for the greater good. Yeah. But it was done very humorously.
It was, because I just love the giddiness over the mermaid. Because that comes back later.
Yeah, it comes back later. So they're back in the cellar, and they're looking at all the different items, and they've all kind of zoned in on one item. And Marty is telling, like, guys, I dare you all to come back outside. But then he even gets sucked into a film strip, I think it was.
Right.
Yeah. And it's very clear that whatever they touch, the staff of the organization, they're very intrigued as to what they choose. And so Dana finds this diary, and she starts reading it, and everyone goes to the diary, and she reads the diary, and there's Latin, and Marty's like, don't read the Latin. And what does she do? She reads the Latin. Very much talking to the screen, this movie is.
It's really gross because it starts talking about incest and torture and...
Yeah, and the husband's bulge, and just gross. Like, it was really uncomfortable listening to that portion.
Actually, that's my least favorite part of the movie. I almost didn't finish the movie because when they started talking about the incest and the classic trope of the isolated family, like, torturing each other and raping each other, I was like, well, I'm done.
Yeah, I liked watching them interact with the objects, but when she started reading, very uncomfortable. Yeah. Which is weird because I'd never felt uncomfortable throughout the rest of the movie. And anytime I saw Patience afterwards, I felt very uncomfortable.
Yes, same.
So the diary belongs to this little girl named Patience, who's part of the Buckner family. And because they started reading the diary and actually interacting with the diary, you find out that that's who's going to kill them. And they yell at the Buckners, and the mechanics won because that's who they guessed. The intern's happy because that's who he guessed. Hadley's very upset because one of the characters had a conch. So Hadley's very upset because he's like, I just wanted the merman.
Like, I'll never get to see He's so distraught, that poor man.
He's so distraught. He's very clearly upset. But everyone else is very happy because the Buckners have 100% completion rate, I think. Yeah. And so you see the Buckners actually coming out and they're heading towards the cabin. And it's at this point that some bad decisions are made. Because like I said, there's lots of bad decisions. This is where the killings start. Jules and Kurt decide to go out and have sex in the woods.
The only bad decision about that is in the woods.
In the
without
woods.
A blanket.
You were in the cabin.
Yeah.
Like, you could have just gone to your room. But as they're going into the woods, she's having reservations because she's cold, so they turn up the heat in the organization to make it warmer for her.
Right.
They put out the pheromone mist, and they start having sex, and then the guys are like, show your boobs, and like, the security guard is very upset. And that's where you get the first hint that they want more than just the death. They want the torture, the suffering. They need more than just the blood. And you're like, who's they?
Well, and she has to show her tits.
Yeah, she has to.
Like, she has to fulfill some expected ideal.
Right. Well, and it happened a lot in 80s slasher films, too. The minute they had sex, that was when they died. So, yeah, she's moaning and groaning, and then that's when one of the Buckners comes and starts attacking them.
Yeah. That made me think about the audience in the 80s. Like, the dudes, the kids, were probably like, show us your boobs in the audience. And that's what Hadley and Susan did. They were like, show us your boobs. That's so weird.
Yeah. And so that's where Jules actually does die. She's the first to die. And one of the things that I wanted to point out was after she dies, Hadley and citizens say this really kind of scary prayer. Like, we offer this in humility and fear. And then they flip a switch and you see some blood. And so that's where it becomes clear that they're sacrifices.
It was very solemn.
And that was kind of the only time they were serious in the whole movie. And from there it goes. So scary. Like, Kurt runs back to the cabin. Guys, we gotta get out of here. We gotta get out of here.
Yeah, let's go out to the things.
Right, yeah. Where's Jules? She's gone, man. She's gone. And Dana's like, typical slasher girl, like, I gotta get Jules. So she opens the door. There's one of the Buckners with Jules' head and throws it at her. And we get more into the manipulations because they go back, close all the doors, and Kurt's telling them, hey, let's all stay together and let's one by one close each door and each window to be safe. And then he walks into the hallway. You see they pump something into the air and he's like, wait, let's split up, which everyone knows. Like, that's not what you do in horror movies. You don't split up. But Holden's like, yeah, that's a great idea. Yeah, we'll cover more rooms. Right?
Yeah, and Marty's like, what? What?
Which, backtrack to Marty, there's a point before all this happens where he's sitting down in a chair and he's very much stoned and he's reading Little Nemo, and all of a sudden he hears a woman's voice saying, I want to take a walk outside. And he's like, what? And it happens and he's like, what?
Yeah, that's right.
And he's in his room and he's like, I'm the master of my own self. And like, he's saying all something. He goes, I'm going to take a walk outside. He's very aware, but he's also the idiot.
Right. He's too baked to really follow through.
Yeah. So as they go back inside and they split up, they get locked in their rooms. So Marty knocks over a lamp. The lamp breaks and he sees a camera. He makes a connection that he's on reality TV, which I thought was funny because reality TV was in its peak at that moment.
Oh.
So I was like, oh, maybe it's a reality TV show, like horror show. Like, I wasn't thinking. And then they do the stereotypical, the killer comes from behind and grabs him, and it's one of the Buckners and he's fighting him. And that's when Marty is perceived to be dead. He gets dragged into the woods to his death. The organizers, they do the sacrifice, they pull the blood, but here, for some reason, there's like a little earthquake. And so you're kind of like, well, what the hell does that mean? Which I didn't notice until I watched it this time. I was like, oh, there's something wrong that happened. But then they continue on, and it's here that we realize that Japan failed.
Right. They had the ghost of the girl. The little girl ghost didn't work. The little classroom of girls basically ascend her soul.
Yeah, into a little frog.
It was kind of sweet.
Yeah. So it's very clear. They show the destruction around the world and they're like, it's on us now. And so you're kind of nervous almost. Like, I felt kind of nervous. I was like, well, what is on America? Yeah. What is it?
Oh, no, you know what though? I wasn't nervous at that point. I remember thinking, well, if Japan is number one to always succeed at whatever they're trying to do, and these little girls ruined it, like ascending a soul, we're fucked. I remember thinking, oh no, we're all screwed. Like, we're not going to do it.
Is sitting there looking at the screen of these girls like singing a hymn, and he's like, F you, F you, F you. To these little kids.
Yeah.
And it's so funny. And this is why I tell you, this is not a typical horror movie. Like, it is riddled with comedy. And so this is where we get actually a second mention of the Ancient Ones. We hear that there's something going on. I still don't know at this point what the Ancient Ones. I just know there's a sacrifice. That's who they're sacrificing to, that I assume. And that's it. But then Kurt, Dana, and Holden, they realize that Marty's gone. They're managed to escape the house, which that's a whole nother situation. But they go to the Rambler and they're like, we're getting the heck out of Dodge.
Wasn't it around that time too that one of them makes the comment of like, what the hell is up with your cousin's cabin? Or
no, that was when they were in the cellar. Because they're like, but your cousin has some weird taste.
Yeah.
So they're leaving, they're trying to get out, and you're like, oh, okay, this is great, they're getting out. But then the organization's like, oh, the tunnel's not blown. They were supposed to make it so that they couldn't escape.
Yeah, one of the mechanics, the mechanic department or somebody fell through.
Yeah. And they're like, we didn't get the signal. And so the organization, they're scrambling or whatever. They managed to get the tunnel blown in time so that the crew can't leave. And so this is where Kurt all of a sudden has a motorcycle. Yeah. I don't know where it came from. I never saw it before, which is typical in 80s slasher films. So, okay. And he's like, I'm gonna jump to the other side.
It was very like jump the shark or jump the gorge.
Yeah.
Like the Simpsons where they jump over the...
Yeah, but we all know because we saw that freaking bird in the beginning that he's not gonna make it to the other side.
Though? By then I had forgotten about the bird. The first time I saw this, I had forgotten about the bird and I was like, it'll be okay. It'll be okay. He's so smart.
No, I did not forget about the bird. I did not. I was like, oh, no. Because you know what? Because I saw it in the theater, it jumped me. That's probably why I didn't forget it. And poor Kurt, I'm gonna get the cops, biggest guns, and we're gonna come guns blazing, and we're gonna save y'all. Just stay in the RV. He gets on the motorcycle and he revs up and he jumps and then he's dust.
And it was like one of those fly zappers. Yeah. And then it rolls down the thing. I remember the first time I watched it because I had forgotten about the bird. I was like, oh no.
Yeah.
Oh no.
Wow. It wouldn't stop. I'll be like, what?
That was another great thing about the cinematography is that they let that scene carry out. Because it goes from being, oh no, to that's kind of funny.
Yeah. Next we have Holden and Dana. They're the last two left. And Holden's like, we're just gonna do whatever we can to get out. And at this point, Dana realizes that there's nothing that they can do.
Yeah.
That they're clearly puppets in a theater and every move is to this ultimate end. And Holden's like, I need you to stay with me. And he's really pumping her up and she's like, great. And you pan over and then a Buckner gets Holden right in the neck. Oh god, that was such a gross bleh.
Yeah, what were they using? Like hunting traps.
Yeah.
Ugh.
It was so gross. And so when Holden dies, everyone starts celebrating in the organization because it's perceived that
it's a wrap.
They've completed their mission. The world has been saved. And so they're popping champagne. There's tequila. And then there's a red phone in there and it starts to ring. In the background, like they're playing music, right? And in the background, poor Dana's struggling with a Buckner in the back. Clearly fighting for her life. And then one guy's like, I wanted her to make it. Like, I really liked her. And the red phone rings and everyone goes quiet. Mm-hmm. And turns out that something went wrong with the ritual and they're not satisfied, the Ancient Ones. So they have to go back and figure out what it is. And that's when we go back to where Dana's fighting off the Buckner and it looks like she's getting ready to die. And then Marty comes and saves the day. Marty was not dead. And
I like that reveal a lot too.
Me too, because at that point I'd already forgotten the rumble or whatever. And I was like, well, what went wrong? And then when Marty shows, like, oh my god, with this big bog.
Yeah. Well, but also how he survived. When he gets dragged off in the woods, you don't see anything except him going over a log.
Yeah, and then, so when I watch movies at home, I watch them with subtitles. I was reading the subtitles and it was like stabbing noises.
Yeah.
And so I was like, oh, well, he got stabbed to death. But I guess he did not because he survived. And he survived in a condition to where he can run and jump and do everything. He's hurt, but not dying.
Yeah.
And Marty takes Dana to this, he takes her back to where the cabin was. He finds this latch and he opens it and there's an elevator. And that connects them back to the organization. And she's like, why would we go there? And he's like, where else can we go? Yeah. You know? And so they go in there and then we enter in on my favorite scene.
Yeah.
Which we will talk about in another episode. It's too much to get into now. But as they go in through the elevator, like in the square, you come to find out as they're moving through, they're seeing these different people and things. Because there's a wolf and that's another jump scare. And those are the monsters. And that's when Dana comes to the realization organization that they chose how they were going to die. And that's where we meet, let me get his name, Fornicus, the Lord of Bondage and Pain. And I was obsessed with him because, not that he was cute or anything, but in his look, he very much reminded me of Hellraiser.
Hellraiser, yeah.
And so I was just really obsessed with this character, and I wish that I could have seen more of him.
You know, that's funny because I got obsessed with the ballerina.
I mean, now that I looked at her, definitely lots of interest.
Because I want to figure out what the trap is, because it isn't until she turns around that you find out she's a monster. What's the trap?
Yeah.
You know, what's the allure? So
when they were back in the cellar, Holden was looking at the box where the ballerina popped out and the music played. And I thought, well, wouldn't that trigger her? But what was it about the box that would trigger her? I don't know.
Also, how does she kill people?
Yeah.
She's just, I mean, yeah, she's ballerina, but her face is a mouth.
Yeah.
I was very intrigued with her because I feel like everybody else, you're like, oh, Wolfman, Hellraiser, blah, blah. You see the ballerina and it's like, but how?
So
I also feel like everything had and like you said, we'll get into it one day, but I feel like everything had a lore source.
Yeah.
I don't know a ballerina lore source.
Off the top of my head, I don't know,
right.
But it would take a lot of research for us, and we will cover it
one day.
I am excited for when we cover that sucker.
That and 13 Ghosts, we're gonna find out.
It's gonna be so fun. So this is not the end of Cabin in the Woods, but I'm just touching on it briefly. So Dana realizes that they chose, and she was the decision maker. And oh no, a cop comes. He tells them to get out. And he says, "Only the girl." And she's like, "Why only me?" And I think that's when she realizes that Marty needs to die. So they end up getting the cop for taking his gun, and then they go into this one little cubicle area where there's a bunch of elevators. And they're hiding because they're being chased by, the organization's security team. And Dana finds the big red button. Like, it couldn't be any more obvious, right? And it says System Purge. And she's like, oh, hell yes. And this is another favorite scene because every elevator ding that happens is just such an innocent sound, right? Monsters come out in troves. After the first elevator ding, it was just covered in blood.
Yes.
It was just a bloody mess, and it was gore, and it was disgusting, and it was great.
Well, I wonder, why aren't the monsters attacking each other?
Right, they're only attacking the people, and then they're moving on into the rest of the organization.
Do they have an understanding that they've been held captive and are being
I'll
used?
Come back to that.
Okay.
Because that's when I touch on the ancient ones.
Okay.
After that, they kind of go through, and the organization is obviously, it's gone.
Yeah, they're screwed.
They're screwed. So it's every man for himself. And as Dana and Marty try to just stay in survival mode, you see members of the organization going down. And poor Hadley, he finally gets to meet his merman. But the merman kills him. And his last words are like, you gotta be kidding me. Something like that. They end up in the sacrificial room. And this is where you see 5 figures that you've been kind of hinted at earlier. And we get to see the director, and that's Sigourney Weaver. And she kind of explains that they have to sacrifice 5 individuals, the virgin being optional.
Which is interesting.
Right. I thought that was interesting too, because normally the virgin is the one sacrificed because she's a virgin.
She's the only necessary one.
Right.
Especially with the original one-off statement that they made earlier about the virgin and the volcano.
So it was really weird. But then she's telling him the virgin is optional, and Dana's like, but I'm not a virgin. And the director's like, we work with what we get.
I would assume these days you work with what you get.
And so the director sort of plays on Dana and tells her that, like, Marty needs to die in order for the rest of the world to be saved, that this is a necessary evil, that they just have to do it because they're looking out for the greater good. And you see a little inner struggle with Dana. She's just thinking about it. And then Marty lets her get attacked by a wolf while he handles the director. And I think at that point, after he saves her...
For a second time.
Yeah, for a second time, she realizes, like, no, I'm gonna just... And so Marty and Dana are sitting on the steps. The time has already passed for all the sacrifices. They're smoking up one last joint because, of course, that's what you do when the world's about to end. And time runs out, the rumblings start, the walls start caving in, a big, huge hand just comes out. And that's the end of the movie. But that's not the end of what I'm going to talk about. Because I want to talk about the ancient ones. So they live underground, they require sacrifice, and like you said, they mentioned it used to be as easy as throwing a woman in a volcano. But now it's about suffering, sacrifice, and it takes days and extensive planning and manipulation. And so it made me wonder if the ancient ones were getting more and more hungry, more and more...
Restless,
yeah. And so I wasn't sure. And then when I was reading about the ancient ones, someone posted on the Cabin in the Woods Woods wiki that all of the monsters are controlled by the Ancient Ones. So that could be why they only attacked humans and not each other.
Because that kind of plays into the idea of, do you know the theory that Lilith, the first woman, was the mother of monsters?
Mm-hmm.
And that all monsters come from her, so maybe the Ancient Ones, all monsters come from them?
Maybe.
And that's why they kind of follow their rules?
Yeah. When Marty and Dana were in the square and they were looking at all the other monsters and the organization was looking for them, they found them in box 3606. Like, how many boxes are in there?
Weren't some of them empty, though?
Some of them were empty, yeah. So I don't know technically how many monsters there were. When I looked up on Wikipedia, they only made 60. So one of the other things I wanted to...
that's only 60, though, in America.
Yeah. So I was like, well, it is what it is. One of the things that I noticed that was just really weird to me, just kind of out there, I was like, why did they choose to put this in the movie? I noticed on the board when everyone was making their bets that there was unicorn on there.
I saw that too.
And then when the monsters came out, there was a unicorn. I was like, how weird is it that something that's like normally pure and like all things good is like a monster?
I think the last time I watched this movie, I paused it to see what all the monsters were.
Don't tell my daughter this.
Yeah. You know, though, I think there is one lore somewhere, I forget where it is, but it says that unicorns kill people. Kill the bad, the evil.
Huh. I'm so excited for when we go into the monsters here. Because that would be a really fun one to research. So one of the things that I noticed, a couple of common tropes was the final girl, Dana. The Dead Star Walking, which was Chris Hemsworth. He was Thor. And it reminds me of Scream, where Drew Barrymore was the most famous, but she was killed off in the beginning. And you were just like, what in the hell? And so I thought that was another horror trope. Of course, death by sex with Jules. The hero of the story was actually Marty. The anti-villain / necessary evil was the organization and what they had to do. And then my favorite one, be careful what you wish for. Yes. The merman.
Yeah.
I love this movie. It just is the best.
One of my favorite parts about Marty is that the Kim department, they're talking about how they did the bottle blonde and but then they're like, why is this one guy like not... Why is he not falling for everything? Like, didn't you get to his weed? And they're like, I guess he had hidden weed. And it's like, obviously the pothead had hidden weed. Like, duh. Did you see the one blunt he had set aside? And we're like, that's probably it.
Yeah, that's probably it.
No. He probably has a hydro closet somewhere, and that's what you missed. Yeah. And so, like,
he probably has many.
Right. In fact, I think he does, because wasn't there, like, a hidden compartment in his thermos?
Yeah. When you first introduced him, he's smoking this big-ass bomb. And then he gets out of the car, and Kurt's like, you cannot take that into the RV in my cousin's cabin. And he's like, what? And he's maneuvering it as a regular to-go third coffee cup.
Yeah, he definitely had more than the one or two stashes they found.
One of the things that I read about Marty was that one of the tropes that they used was that he was the actual narrator of the story. And I was like, yes, because we saw a lot of things through his eyes and opinions and everything, which I liked.
Commentary.
Yeah, his commentary.
Yeah.
I love these two. What I really liked was how different they were in their endings, where Leon chose to continue the necessary evil for the greater good, whereas Dana and Marty were like, no, screw it.
Yeah, I felt that way too, because when I was rewatching Midnight Meat Train, I was like, man, I'd have been like, screw these mole people, let's drop a nuke down here. Like, do we really need New York?
Right.
I love New York, but screw it.
Yeah.
You know? If they're isolated to these abandoned subway areas, just bomb the place.
Right.
Know? Swiftly evacuate the city.
Yeah.
I guess I should warn you all, if it ever comes down to my choice of whether or not I should continue a necessary evil to save the world, we're all screwed. I'm killing us all. I'm Marty.
Yeah. If that is it, then yeah, same.
And it has nothing to do with what will happen to my soul in the next world or whatever, because I did horrible things for the necessary good. It would just be like, that is the world we have to live in.
Yeah.
That the end of the world is always just one yes or no question away.
Yeah.
We need a reboot. I'm done.
Well, and I couldn't imagine being in Leon's place and like committing murder daily.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't know.
I couldn't
Yeah,
do
if
it.
Mahogany didn't have the heart for it anymore, like I sure as hell wouldn't.
I mean, yeah, same.
Yeah, unless I could go Dexter and go hunting the people I thought deserved it.
No.
Well,
now that I would do.
Exactly.
That I would do.
But no, it's just whatever poor schmuck is the last guy on the train. Like, no, that was me sometimes. I would definitely be Marty. If that's what we're living in, if that's the secret we're keeping, we're hitting restart.
Like I was saying with the ancient ones, it seemed like it was close to where they were going to overtake regardless.
Yeah.
The way that it was going. One of the things that I wanted to end on is why we need horror and why we need these two. Because both movies showed us the importance of red flags and warning signs and the consequence of not listening. And so if you take anything away from either of these, just listen to the warning signs. Hope you guys enjoyed today's episode. We will leave you guys and see you next episode. Bye, y'all.
Bye. If you liked listening to us ramble on about horror, subscribe to our podcast and tell your friends. And if you would like to follow us on social media, you can find us on Instagram or Facebook at LLOTL Podcast.
Check out our website by going to lastlibraryonTheLeft.com. Be sure to visit our About Us page to discover our 2 truths and a lie. Or, if you'd like to send us an email, you can reach us at somethingwicked@lastlibraryonTheLeft.com.